Since I didn't remind people that I would be doing this today, I am going to begin in exactly 1 minute. Oh, am I the person that's here? I don't know. But yeah, I will begin at 3 p.m. sharp-ish. I am talking today about Peter Thiel, and this is the second video, the second Tech Lord Takedown video that I've done. The first is Luck of the Zuck, which I can link in the description after I complete this one. And I am, oh, that's somebody doing a phone call, so I will try to talk over them. My Luck of the Zuck video was done from a perspective of having a lot of respect for Mark Zuckerberg. And I do not have a lot of respect for Peter Thiel. And I wanted to be not necessarily antagonistic in this video, but very diagnostic. The past couple of days, it's really been hitting home to me through things that people have been saying that I should be a little softer in my approach. My great aunt loves to say to me, you catch more flies with honey, which is fine. That's fair. It's a good assessment. And I do believe, as I said in the Luck of the Zuck video, that everybody has the capacity for growth. Everybody has the ability to self-recognize and decide that they want to be better and they want to do better. And in the wild event that Peter Thiel has any desire to heal and to make better decisions, I want to give him that grace. However, I will be honest, I don't think that he has any incentive to heal. I don't think that he has any intent to be better or to do better. But I'm not going to pick him apart as much in this video as I intended. And if anyone does come in, I mean, you will miss this because it's live. But please stop me from being rude. I just want to give the facts as I understand the facts to be. I am going to speculate a bit in this video because there are a lot of webs that I have connected, but I cannot prove that the connections are there. It's just my pattern recognition abilities that see certain habits. I will be very clear when I am speculating and when I am giving facts. All of the facts are very easily found if you do your research and look online and determine. You can look up anything that I'm telling you. If I don't explicitly state that it is speculation, you can find the receipts yourself. So I want to begin with Peter Thiel's political motivations, which are, I think, pretty obvious, and everyone loves to, when people criticize him, everyone loves to criticize him for his very clear, very obvious political goals and the way that he's paying players in political theater. He's like a background puppeteer, or maybe at some point he was a background puppeteer. Maybe he sees himself as a background puppeteer. That's speculation of the United States political arena. And the United States political arena, even if it is a dying empire, it still kind of controls the flow of the global economy and the war machine, I'll put it that way. So in 2016, Thiel funded Donald Trump. And he also had like a, he also had, I don't remember the name of the governor, but he funded some other very Republican, very conservative governor. I don't think that he won. And because of some things I will tell you later, some other sections of this takedown, there was this echoing that he was going to step back from politics in the 2024 election. That's not what happened, because Thiel ended up funding JD Vance and funding Vance's vice presidential run. And now Trump is president and JD Vance is vice president. And a lot of that is due to the financial influence that Peter Thiel personally played in the 2024 election. He represents himself as a conservative libertarian, which I will also talk about in a later section. And there's this idea that he's trying to dismantle the government. He speaks very openly about being fearful of some kind of single entity controlling, like a political globalism, where there's like a hierarchy that controls the entire global political and economic arena. And from my perspective, speculation, I think that is his explicit goal from his actions and some of the things that I will reveal. It seems to me pretty apparent that he is, if not trying to become the person that has that level of power and influence, definitely trying to financially control the person who does. So when I was doing this research, other people speculated that Peter Thiel had an intent to kind of override foreign influence in the elections. And I think that is, it's possible. I can see the point. I can see where people were going with that. It's possible that he has that intent, that he's trying to prevent or override other foreign influences in the government. And I will talk more about that as well. But it's crucial to remember that Thiel is a foreign influence in the government. He's German. So when he is financially influencing the way that United States politics develop, he's not doing that as a person born and raised in the United States. He's doing that as a foreign influence. So even if you are right that he is, in some extent, he's trying to compete, even though competition is for losers, compete against Elon Musk, who is also a foreign influence, or compete against Putin, who may or may not be influencing Donald Trump. There's a lot of speculation on that. He still is a level of foreign influence in the United States government. I think that this idea that he has, that he is going to dismantle current systems of, I mean, it's not even an idea, and this is not really speculation because it's something that he said himself. He's very clear that because he has these fringe political ideas, he is not really capable of like building a platform that would make people vote for him. Excuse me, but he does have the ability to fund technology and to build technology that controls the way that the government is run and the way that the government does war as a business. So I didn't talk about this in the Luck of the Zuck video because I wanted to save it for the Thiel Kill. Peter Thiel was on the board of Facebook. And not only was Peter Thiel on the Facebook board, Peter Thiel worked as, he owned a lot of shares. He owned a pretty significant percentage of Facebook. And he was kind of a little bit like an advisor to Mark Zuckerberg, or at the very least, someone that appeared to be on the Facebook board to back Zuck's opinions and his decisions. He left. I didn't write down the year of this, unfortunately, so I'm not going to give a precise year, but he left Facebook a little bit after Trump was being sort of antagonistic to Zuck. Mark Zuckerberg, or I guess Facebook Meta, made the decision to remove Trump from the Facebook platform. And like a lot of social media companies did, and then Trump made a lot of threats, which I talk in the Luck of the Zuck video about why those threats are empty. Like, he's not going to make the CEOs and the executives of these platforms responsible for what users post on the platforms, because now he has Truth Social and he would put himself at risk of that as well. So, but a little bit after this whole fiasco of Mark Zuckerberg deciding to do a better job, which I think he really should reinvest in, trying to do a better job of preventing fake news on his platforms, which now is like not a thing. There's no safeguards. But because of this decision, presumably, that's my presumption, Thiel left the Facebook board. He sold all of his shares. He put all of his focus into Palantir. And Palantir, I will talk about the funding that Palantir has received, how exactly where that money came from, and how he has built Palantir as a data company. However, in the Luck of the Zuck video, I talk about Zuck being the king of data. And Mark Zuckerberg really is the king of data. And I speculated in that video that there's probably some level of crossover between the data that Facebook has collected over the past couple of decades and the data that Palantir has. And there's also Zuck almost likely has data from Palantir as well, because he's a really good hacker. I'm not suggesting that Mark Zuckerberg has in any way hacked Palantir's systems. I'm just saying he has a pattern of absorbing from the people that he works with. So I think it's really interesting for Peter Thiel to have worked with Mark Zuckerberg directly for so long, and to have been close to him in a business relationship aspect at the very least, to see how Mark Zuckerberg does business, and to make this decision to sell his shares and to go and work with Zuck's ops. Because the one thing, and I don't know how long this will be a thing, I hope forever, please let it be forever, but the one thing that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't do is really share data. He's like a data hoarder, and he gets in a lot of trouble with various governments because he is not willing to part with certain aspects of his data collection business in ways that other companies just will like bend the knee and immediately do. So I was thinking this morning when I was thinking about doing this video, because I was trying to make Peter Thiel more likable in my own mind and to be softer a bit to him. And it's possible, but very unlikely, very improbable, that Peter Thiel is like working as some kind of double agent, especially when I get into later aspects of the things that he's done, and how many pies he's had his fingers in, and how many of those pies have exploded around his hands. But I don't think I don't really believe that. I just had like It's possible, but it's very unlikely. It's very improbable. Um, so Palantir has sold like $1 billion worth of software to all of the alphabet agencies. And his software, Palantir software, is surveillance software. Palantir is primarily a surveillance company, and he sold software to the CIA, he sold software to the NSA, he sold software to the FBI. But Palantir is also funded. One of the major funding sources of Palantir was NQTEL, which is owned, run by the CIA. So if you're one of those people that's like obsessed with things being CIA psyops, Palantir really seems like a CIA psyop. But I don't have any evidence of that, so that is speculation as well. He also, on the end of doing things with the government directly and not just their alphabet agencies, he again funded Trump's initial run, and he funded Vance's 2024 vice presidential run. And he also now has a $250 million contract with the US military. So he went from the Facebook data collection business model to having a completely different data collection business model where he's collecting citizen data. It's very important that I explicitly state that he's collecting citizen data for the United States government. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here because this is something that I think about a lot. When people talk about what Nixon did wrong, like Nixon was spying on a very paranoid level, and then he was impeached for doing that. And it was such a big deal, even though I'm sure every president before him, to some extent, spied on what they perceived as their adversaries. It's just that Nixon saw everyone as his adversary. Since Nixon, pretty much every president has done that, like explicitly. And the government just is, since 9/11, the government has become a surveillance company, like a surveillance model company against the United States citizens. And Palantir is the extreme example of that, again, backed by NQTEL, funded by NQTEL, which is owned by the CIA. From there, I want to kind of pivot to the other things because I think it's really important that it's in the forefront of your mind that Palantir is, I don't want to say owned, but a little bit owned by NQTEL. I think it's really important that that is in the forefront of your mind when I talk about Thiel's little Hitler Youth group. And the Thiel Fellowship, which I call the Safe Room Groom, is a grooming mechanism for young people to not go to college or to drop out of college. He pays $200,000 to students to, instead of going to college and getting an education, to come and get real life business experience and either work with Palantir, work with one of Thiel's other companies, or to have him fund, which means that he owns a really good idea that you have. And I want to be clear because I love nuance, and people, like on every side of the fence, people don't like that I can see all sides of things. I want to be clear that I agree that college is a scam. I agree that if you have a good idea and you can get it funded, you should do that, and you should not pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for the possibility of getting a job in the future, especially now when we don't know how the economy and how jobs are going to change with AI. So there is an aspect of this where it's like it really appears that Peter Thiel is doing a good thing. And for what I'm about to say, because Thiel is, if you want to be funded by the Thiel Fellowship, it's not like he's just giving away money to any student that comes to him and says, okay, I have good ideas and I won't go to school, like pay me and I will come and build something. It has to be something that falls under Thiel's specific mindset for how the world is going to evolve, which is why I call it his little Hitler youth group. It has to be something that aligns with Thiel's weird specific ideology. And that is true of pretty much every investment VC fund. They don't just fund everybody. They don't fund people that they disagree with typically. So it's not like that's a bad thing. It's just that Thiel has self-admitted that he has very fringe beliefs and very fringe ideas, and he considers himself to be a contrarian. So when he is paying these kids who are in a very vulnerable, easily exploited, very easily influenced position in their lives, we should really look at that and what that means, not just for their personal psychology, but how specifically he is trying to shape the future. Because yeah, it sucks to go and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education and not even be guaranteed that you'll be able to find work after doing so. That is a huge scam. That's like a pyramid scheme. But it's also not really fair to you to see something as a huge opportunity and not realize that you're being exploited by someone who's trying to take ownership of the capital of your imagination. And then you kind of there are people who are able to build things and exit and not have to rely on previous investment firms that they've been funded by. But from the perspective of what it looks like he's building a little family. He probably feels like he's building a little family, and that these people, in a certain way, if not financially indebted to him for life, will be psychologically indebted to him for life, especially if they do succeed and they do build a successful business and they do have a successful exit and they make a lot of money. So having said what I said about In-Q-Tel and people's paranoia about alphabet agencies, and then the Safe Room Groom of the Thiel Fellowship, where he is just grooming these youths. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. He has one of his, so aside from his mimicry, his mimetic hypocrisy with Palantir and building Palantir after, or not even after, during his work with Facebook. He also has this hypocritical obsession with the sovereign individual. And I think it's really crucial to note that there's no such thing as a conservative libertarian. That's not real. That doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a conservative libertarian. There's no such thing as believing in the individual sovereignty of citizens, and believing in the individual sovereignty of citizens over the state, which is what libertarianism is. There's no such thing as having that belief and also building surveillance technology against citizens. That is so remarkably incompatible that I don't know why people are not calling him out on this every time he speaks, every time he opens his mouth, every time he makes statements. The only person that Peter Thiel is a contrarian against really is himself, which must be very hard for him and his psychology to just be at battle with himself all the time. That must be very difficult. And I have cognitive empathy against someone that is in that kind of position. However, I want to talk about Clarium Capital and this. Okay, before I talk about Clarium Capital, Peter Thiel said in his own words that freedom and democracy are incompatible, that he believes that freedom and democracy are incompatible, which is a heck of a thing for a libertarian to say. But he walked it back. And I think that as a contrarian to democracy who like costumes his libertarian ideology to attract support from Gen X, it's like when people make statements like that, it's really important, even when they, especially when they try to walk it back, to like look at the actions behind their statements and the things that they have done that support the statements that they make, that they then try to tell people that they didn't really mean because there's pushback against it. So from there, Clarium Capital was an investment firm that Peter Thiel, I don't think he started it, but he was on the board of. And the idea behind Clarium Capital, which I think is very interesting, and I'll get into why later, the idea behind Clarium Capital was that they believed that there would be like a major boom in oil and that oil prices would skyrocket, and it would basically like in a way kind of render the dollar obsolete. And he raised billions of dollars on this idea that like, and it's so silly to me because for my generation and everyone that's younger, like we see oil as like fossil fuel is a literal dinosaur like waiting for a comet to come and wipe everything out. Like it's not a feasible energy mechanism, and definitely to in the 2000s build an entire investment firm around the possibility, like to bet on oil to that extent is like very foolish. And I'm not saying that Peter Thiel is foolish. I think he's a very smart man, but smart people make dumb decisions all the time. And Clarium Capital was a very dumb decision. And I want to be very careful about what I'm going to say because I'm not saying that Thiel was directly involved in anything I am about to reveal. However, why Clarium Capital might have considered backing oil to this extent has a lot to do with how these like criminal, crooked oil tycoons were trading oil in the background and backing very despotic regimes in India and China and countries in Africa. Like the oil was a very dirty business. And there is, and I'm not, again, saying that Peter Thiel was directly connected with any of this. But one of the big stories that I think there was a leader in, I believe, Zimbabwe named Robert Mugabe. And very polarizing, very hated man. And he, like, one of the things that he did was that he was taking, he was taking back, I guess I should say, from his perspective and probably from the perspective of anyone who is like Native African and darker skinned, he was taking back white owned land in Zimbabwe, which seems like a good thing. But he was, again, very hated man, was not a good thing, was a very personal, selfish thing. And he is known for having done this. Like if you look up Robert Mugabe, it's one of his like things. But what's interesting is that even though he was doing this thing, which like now Elon Musk would probably say is like what is his like obsession with white genocide. He was being backed by a company called Oxif that I believe the CEO, owner, founder, I don't know, of Oxif is named Daniel Ock, but I might be wrong about that. And so he was being funded by a German investment firm. He had a banker called, I believe it's Gideon Gono, and this banker was doing all kinds of backroom deals because Zimbabwe was a very oil poor country and therefore poor. He was doing all these backroom deals with Gaddafi and Iran and basically like collecting oil. And he's just like a very specific example. There's like a lot of people, a lot of princes and princesses and queens and kings who were doing the same thing at this time. But because Oxif is like one of the companies that really suffered for this, I brought them up intentionally. So investment firms like Oxif and these regimes that were built on these dirty oil deals in the background, they were essentially looting the Titanic. What Clarium Capital was doing was like waiting on a lifeboat for everyone to come up and collect. And this ended very badly because obviously, even though oil prices are astronomical now, oil did not become more powerful than the dollar. And Clarium Capital lost a lot of money. When I say that Thiel is making himself the last man of the old world, I think it's really an echo of what he got on board with Clarium Capital, where he saw these regimes doing like these really dirty moves that were making them powerful and more financially relevant. And he decided that he was going to put all of his eggs in the basket of these like powerful despots who ended up suffering the consequences of their actions. So he has this idea, it appears, that he is going to reach some level of supreme sovereignty, and that it seems, speculating, it seems like his path to that is to always side with despots or to side with governments that are trying to use some kind of resource to control their citizens. In the early 2000s, it was oil. In the 2020s, it's AI and surveillance. Because not only is he building surveillance technology, which is like run on machine learning and machine intelligence, he's building weaponry that is run on machine learning and machine intelligence. And I think that I'm not going to make any open public statements about what I think about that. But Alex Karp did say his lower self wants to use AI weapons to piss fentanyl on analysts that he doesn't like. So I think a company that does both building surveillance weapons or building surveillance technology specifically against citizens and building AI weapons is like, that is a concern. That's something that we really shouldn't allow to happen as a society, like as a global society. That's super dangerous. But what do I know? I'm just somebody's dumb mom. In 2023, Peter Thiel was accused of being an FBI informant. And obviously, I cannot say that Peter Thiel is an FBI informant because FBI informants aren't just like on a list that you can verify. There's no specific verification that Thiel is an FBI informant, but he was accused of being an FBI informant in 2023. He was the man that accused him of being an FBI informant, because this is how it always works, was himself probably an FBI informant and is like an unreliable narrator. I will say that very clearly so that I don't get sued. However, when journalists, investigators went back and tried to verify this statement, they found that he had been connected with an FBI agent named Jonathan Buma. And Jonathan Buma, I don't believe he is an FBI agent anymore because he was kind of a whistleblower against the Trump administration. And the research that I found said that he was explicitly told not to have any communication with his FBI informants anymore. But it was found that Jonathan Buma had connected with Peter Thiel as a confidential human source, which is like an FBI informant, in 2021. Everybody loves to talk about this and like his connection with the Trump administration. Even the articles that I read were postulating that he was an informant because of his involvement with the Trump administration. If Peter Thiel is an FBI informant, big if, because I cannot verify that, I do not believe that it has anything to do with the Trump administration. Because if you go back to 2019, Mithril Capital was under FBI investigation. Mithril Capital is owned by Peter Thiel. Mithril Capital is a major funder of Palantir. So we have now on these three levels, I'm just going to draw the web here and let you make your own conclusions. The major funders of Palantir are Mithril Capital and In-Q-Tel, which is owned by the CIA. Mithril Capital was definitely 100%, it is verifiable, under FBI investigation in 2019. Mithril Capital has about $1.5 billion in assets and is still an investment firm. They're still funding companies. They're still funding Palantir. So this company that was under FBI investigation that funded one of the owner's companies that was also funded by the CIA doesn't have anything happen during their FBI investigation. And then 2 years later, Peter Thiel is, if not officially an informant, definitely verifiably connected with Jonathan Buma. So those are the connections that I drew. That's the web that I saw. And I'm not stating anything certain, but if Peter Thiel is an FBI informant, I really don't believe it has anything to do with Trump. In fact, one of the articles that I read said that he was specifically not allowed to inform on Trump. So what he's informing on, I don't know. But it probably has something to do with his investment firm and whatever it is that the CIA is having him do behind the scenes that we don't know, like why they gave so much money, why In-Q-Tel gave so much money and funded Palantir, other than like obviously having that level of surveillance equipment is beneficial to the alphabet agencies. So that's my little roadmap. And I did this really quickly because there's so much going on around me and it's very loud. I want to end talking a little bit about Thiel's psychology and how he has a little bit of a God complex. And there's a lot of people like to joke about that interview that he did where he was asked if he thinks that humanity should endure, and it took him 30 seconds to answer, and he's like stumbling over his words and then talking about transhumanism, which is its own level of mental health, mental illness. But I think that the really interesting thing, I mean, aside from it being something where he was very specifically being made to feel uncomfortable and being made to express this side of his psychology where he's like always obsessing over the Antichrist and like how the same things that he's doing can lead to the doom of humanity. Being asked if you want humanity to see its doom, I think is a very fair question, but it was asked to make him uncomfortable, and then the way that the interviewer responded to his hesitation was also meant to make him uncomfortable, which is like good. But when he spoke about this, even in the situation where he is being made to feel uncomfortable, he analyzes humanity as though it is a system that he operates outside of. He analyzes humanity as though he's not personally human. And this is like a trauma response. This is something that a lot of neurodivergent people do. So it's not really like against his character, but he is building AI and he has this like calm affect toward social collapse that is exactly what people fear in robots and what people fear in alternate intelligences. So, and I've talked before in AI is a golem and you are not a god, and the quantum causal predictor video about how it's really important to map the psychology of the people that are building AI because they're basically building little golems of like their light and their darkness. And Peter Thiel is building some really nasty golems. He has this belief that he seemingly has this belief. This is speculation, but it's justifiable speculation because he's essentially said it, maybe not verbatim, but that his worldview and his perspective and how he thinks that the world should be shaped deserves to prevail over everything. And he has the financial influence to make that a reality. But he has this belief, completely lacking relational understanding, completely unable to relate with humans on a very basic level where he sees himself as one, and completely lacking empathy, like not even cognitive empathy. Like even the machines have a level of cognitive empathy that Peter Thiel observably lacks. And it's like a lot of the tech lords are very chaotic. Even the tech lords who have similar motives, similar political motives to Peter Thiel, work in a way that, I mean, like probably from their perspective, it's like probably Elon Musk thinks he has a plan. And Sam Altman definitely thinks he has a plan, but they work in a way that's like very chaotic from the outside. Peter Thiel is calculating, and Peter Thiel is cold, and Peter Thiel is like not even on a level that is logical because he is deeply emotional. He builds from a deeply emotional place, even if that emotion is like desire. He is a very emotional man. But he's very cold and he's very calculating and he's very emotional, which is like, if you put those three things together, the DSM has a very specific word for what type of person that is, but I'm not going to say. I will just let the listener decide what it is that they think is wrong with Peter Thiel. But definitely on the level of like having a God complex, he's now infiltrated every aspect of the US government with surveillance tech. He's infiltrated literally every aspect of the US government with surveillance technology and with weaponry. Even if Donald Trump has like a total dumpster fire of a presidency, not that it would matter because he apparently did last time, and now he's president again, so like who, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But even if he has like a total dumpster fire of a presidency, even if Peter Thiel feels like he has to distance himself from Trump and distance himself from Vance, he still is backed by all of the alphabet agencies. He's still in the US military. So it doesn't really matter if he's like funding these individuals that he thinks will make good puppets for the state, because he is in the state, in the architecture of the state, in a way that he can't really be removed. And like, whatever, he worked for it, good for him. But that is also indicative of his God complex. And he went from like betting on these oil tycoons and betting on the despotic regimes of these people who were doing dirty oil deals to betting on the despotic regimes of people who like share his idea that women shouldn't vote. So it's definitely like a pattern. And I wouldn't say that it's a pattern of success, but it is a pattern of like failing upwards toward his ultimate goal, whatever it is that his ultimate goal is. If I am right in my speculation that he wants to be like a supreme sovereign individual, he's definitely failing upward towards that goal. If I'm not right, then, whatever, he's failing upward towards something else. And I think that is where I will leave this, because I don't want to spend a lot of time ranting about him, even though I could spend hours ranting about him. Again, I don't like him. I don't respect him. But, everyone has the opportunity to heal. Everyone has the opportunity to do better. Everyone has the chance to change their minds and to effectively change their minds in a way where it's like you don't even have to give apologies. You just work in a different direction. So maybe that will happen for Peter Thiel. I doubt it, but maybe it will. Next week, I will do a video on Sam Altman and Elon Musk, and I'm going to do a video on Sam Altman and Elon Musk together for reasons that will be self-evident in the next video. But I hope that you enjoyed this Tech Lord Takedown, and I will see you in a week to talk about Sam Altman and Elon Musk, and that will be very fun because they have super fun psychology. They're like a psychological funhouse that I am really excited to talk about. And